Okay, good. Welcome. Hello from me, I'm Kusalasara, and particularly welcome if you've never been here before to the London Buddhist Centre, or not very often, and also if you're just coming in from the course next door. So very nice to have you join us in the main shrine room. And also welcome to those of you who are watching online. Nice to have you beaming in as well. So just a small preamble. So this is the final week of a series that we've been doing, 6-week series on the, is it 6 or 8? I can't count. Anyway, it is 6. There are 6 parameters. So I've invented 2 more. The parameters, which is one of many formulations of qualities, crystallizations of Buddhist qualities that one aims to develop and that come into their full flourishing when one reaches the same state as the Buddha, i.e. Enlightenment is the culmination of all of these qualities. And week 6, the final week, we're looking at wisdom, which is a word that's really, really associated with Buddhism. And I'm sure that last time we did a series where wisdom was the culmination, I'm sure I ended up teaching it, and I feel very, very ill-qualified to talk to you about wisdom. So it's the most exalted, really the most exalted Buddhist quality. Luckily, Jung came up with a phrase that you specify the centre by inference. Yeah, you specify the centre by inference. So I'm going to, rather than go straight to wisdom, I'm going to try and walk around it and see if we get a sense of what might be the centre of this this whole set of practices. This whole what's the word? It's like movement of our being that we take on to aim for when we're practicing Buddhism. So just to say some of the other qualities, what we're looking at. So we had generosity, which is dana, sila, which is often we say it as ethics, but really it's like how we conduct ourselves, conduct in a way. So generosity, conduct. What else do we have? We have patience. Patience really perfected is something like a complete serenity in the face of how things really are, in the face of not knowing. Patience, virya, which is energy or spiritual ardour, a zest and directionality for the spiritual life. And then last week we looked at samadhi, which is these rarefied states of mind that one can develop if you're really, really disciplined in meditation. So mysteriously, Akasha Mitra drew the Death Star to illustrate samadhi. So you can catch up with that on YouTube. It's there. So if you want to retrospectively look at the parameters, if you haven't been to these all of these talks, they are all on. This whole series is recorded on YouTube. Yes, so sort of with quaking boots, I'm going to be talking about wisdom. It's much easier to talk about wisdom as what it isn't, and so that's where I'll start. And actually, Akasha Mitra was hinting of, for those of us who were here in the first half, he used one of the words that I really resonate, which is incompleteness, and I think that's what's drawn me to become a Buddhist. Is growing up, there were a lot of things that I felt dissatisfied with, usually myself, and just sort of as I became a young adult, I might not have articulated this to myself, but I can identify it now, just this sense of feeling like an incomplete person, and I can recognise that because I was always wanting things. I wanted something to make me feel whole. I could feel this sense of not being whole. I still don't feel whole, and I think there's sort of levels of that. I feel more psychologically whole now. I'm a much more rounded person. I'm much more even person. Various ups and downs notwithstanding, but we won't go into those. But beneath that, there's a sort of sense that whatever I do, I can't attain this sense of wholeness. It require like getting all the conditions that I require to feel whole and maintaining them. Arranging the world around me and like holding that there like still, and that's not possible. That's not possible. We all know that. So this sense of incompleteness, and I think it's to do with having the kind of consciousness that can reflect on itself, that can watch what it's doing, and can make choices that aren't just to do with instinct. So I think the reason we love looking at animals is because they do seem quite complete in themselves. Unless they've had a lot of sort of human-related trauma, animals just sort of live themselves fully, and they really embody all of their qualities. So, dogs are just like really doggy. Cats, cats just do their like cat thing, like fully. They don't go, oh, I don't know if I am actually a cat. Like, I look like a cat. I don't fit in with the other cats. They don't sort of worry at themselves in that way, or like, should I really be catching mice? Should I don't know, like, should I be a vegan? Or maybe I just try being a vegetarian before, like none of this, or like, how can I be a better cat? They just do it. They just get like, and so animals have got this like compelling sense of like full embodiment, like no restraint on their instincts, which I think we find attractive on the whole. But we're not like that. We've got this thing that this capacity to question the kind of life that we want to live, the question the kind of person that we want to form ourselves into. We can make choices more than just on instinct. We can say, oh, there's a range of things I'm going to aim for, and I'm going to aim for that. There's a kind of person I can be, and I'm going to try and be that person. It's wonderful, and we don't know how to wield it. And I definitely, I think that's my sense of incompleteness that I couldn't identify as I was growing up. The difficulty of having consciousness that can be self-aware, that can know that it is a being in relation to other beings. Yeah. I've written a lot of sort of dark words here: fear, confusion, and but I think that this sense of incompleteness. What do I want to say? It also means that there's things that we don't understand. So I definitely was aware of that. And I think that comes out in teenagehood of like suddenly. Maybe everybody has this at different phases of their life, but you suddenly realise your parents don't know everything. Sometimes, that's well into adulthood, and for some people it's very, very young. I remember a boy at our primary school going around saying his mum knew everything, and we were like, yeah. But it's a sort of very innocent thing that thought that everything you need is given to you in the world, and then the world sort of trickles in, providing one with doubt about that. And then it's like, well, if my mum doesn't know everything, like, what then? and then we have to find our way. People help us, but with all of the education that we've had, all of the sort of stability that our society offers, all of the resources we have, we don't get, can't sort of manufacture this sense of completeness. And you might find manifests a bit differently. So what I would like you to do. So this is the bit that I used to dread in classes. Is I'm going to get you to talk amongst yourselves, and just maybe get into groups of 3, so we don't have ages, and just see if you have that sense of incompleteness, because that's what made me look for more. So that's what made me think I need to find out a bit more. So it might be when you're talking, you might just think, yes, I resonate, and how do you identify that in your experience? You might think, well, I would put it in a different way, and it might be that you say, what brought you here? It might be that sort of like, what's the longing that brought you here? So we'll just have a few minutes, get into rough groups of 3, and see what comes from that discussion.
I'm identifying it now in my experience of I don't know, I'm having some
So if you're watching online and you can hear me over the hubbub, feel free to just put any thoughts that you have on this in the chat. That might be interesting. Just finish your sentence. Yeah, great. So what came from those little discussions? Anyone willing to say something? You might come up with something between you, or it might be just one thing from...
I think with the three of us, the thing in common was we're convinced that there's a problem and that we kind of know what the solution is if only we could do A or B or C, or if only we can get to this place or do X or Y.
Yeah.
That will solve the thing that you've been talking about.
Okay.
Like it's solvable on its own terms.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Good. So there's a theory you could apply, and then all would be
or
well.
Action or
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Anything else?
The theme that came up in ours was that it's really uncomfortable to stay with, and so I don't know. Certainly with me, I really want to distract myself with something when it's there, and sort of most of the time I'm actually kind of divorced from actually being vaguely aware of it, and sort of getting in contact with it is just really horrible.
And when you say it, what exactly do you mean?
Sort of a sense that sort of this isn't enough.
Okay. Yeah. So, and why do you think that's horrible? Just to probe a bit further.
Big question.
Maybe it's like a visceral feeling. I don't know. Like, yeah.
It's painful, isn't it?
Yeah. But why is it painful? Because in some ways you could say, imagine this was enough. Well, that would be a bit depressing too, wouldn't it? Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, am I the peak of human accomplishment? So why?
I'd say like feeling incomplete or like I'm not enough, that kind of thing. Low self-esteem, or low self-worth could all feel painful. Sort of a mental state, isn't it? Like a kind of it's a deluded state.
Yeah.
Which is we create our own suffering through that. I think.
Yeah. And I think low self-worth and low self-esteem is like one aspect of what I'm talking about. Or maybe it's a bit of a result of that feeling of like incompleteness. But it could come out in a different way. It could come out in like a sense of drive or something else. So it's more than just a sort of psychological mental state. Yeah.
I think that what is hard to bear is the fact that I realize that there needs to be something more, and I want it now. I'm impatient about waiting and doing the ABC to get there. I just want it to happen. This is actually what's hard, I think, to stay with this feeling of incompleteness.
Okay, so so and is it that you know what this thing is, or is it also the fact that one doesn't know? Yeah. Over there, yeah.
I was going to say, kind of in response to what you said, I find that the way that our mind engages in thought and the theory and the thinking of all the actions, that's our default state. We're always trying to address something, and I think it's often actually what's driving all of that noise is the feeling that's underlying this feeling of like discomfort, maybe the feeling of incompleteness, and that your mind is frenzying to try and do something in the external world to address that feeling, and that if you just, when you stop that noise and you turn to face that feeling. The reason we don't do it is because it's so uncomfortable, but we're actually like sitting with the feeling and being like, I don't need to do anything about this, I'm just gonna be present with it. If you can do that, it like diffuses the feeling.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the that's good, isn't it? That's a bit like what we were starting with in the Metta Bhavana as well. Just turning, rather than sort of frenziedly trying to remedy it from externals, you can just turn towards discomfort. Yeah. Any final thoughts from what you've just talked about? Yeah, Martin.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking out. We put so much energy in chasing things, but you never really question that's just the part of it's such a common thing in the human psyche. It's such a part of us, but we never really question it. But the Dharma kind of offers a bit of ways that you can start looking that's a default state of mind often, and learn that it's okay to feel like that.
Yeah.
And we were just sharing how the practice really, just as somebody in the back was saying, just sitting with it and not having to solve everything. It's okay, and having compassion that it's not just me. Everyone's feeling that.
Yeah.
We recognise that in each other.
That's it, isn't it? Yeah. And sometimes we can recognise it more in other people because we're slightly less willing to look at ourselves. Sort of see people like, why do you always think like that? You see sort of people stuck in their grooves and very aware of other people's sort of repetitive habits. And one thing that hasn't been mentioned is fear. I think that there is probably a lot of fear of the unknown. So if there's a sense of incompleteness, which is like the model that I'm using now, then there's something else, isn't there, that we don't know about, and we're just so very afraid of the unknown because it demands something of us, and it probably offers the potential of annihilation. I think that's like at the bottom of all of our fears, and the fear of the unknown. It might not be actual death, but it might mean that we have to change so much that we won't even recognise ourselves. So that's scary. I mean, I definitely, just sort of carrying on talking about how I ended up practicing Buddhism, and recognise also myself. I think I find it particularly interesting personally to think about my teenage life, because all of that self-awareness is just sort of coming more and more into one's being, and that one's not a very civilised person, so it sort of explodes a bit everywhere. That sense of like really wanting to, rather than grope around in the dark and think, oh, this is exciting, there's stuff that I don't know about. So really wanting to stay in the light and stay with what I know, but then also that simultaneously feeling completely restricting, and there's something that's not enough as well. So I think, and I don't think that's just me. I think that's a human tendency, and I'm going to be talking more like in the metaphor of light and dark as well. When we're talking about Buddhism, the word enlightenment is one of the main words, like literally light being shed on what was previously dark. So there's a sort of quality of blindness almost of really not enough information to work out how to live, how to communicate, how to be with other people, how to be with oneself. Sort of we just do our best with what we've got. And then there's all the sort of unevenness of human life as well, that like there's brilliance as well, and like there's times when we feel completely inspired, or like we find like even just for a few moments, like this is what I'm meant to be doing, and then later completely confused, or like a completely different mood takes over and distorts how we see things, and like what do we make of all of these changing mental states, and who are we? So yeah, like brilliant and wonderful and connected and kind, and then obstinate and rude, and like all of these things. So that's individually, and then how that turns into cultures and groups, and those things start becoming more more important in a way, that the effects of that when we group together and pit ourselves against things, and maybe I'll say a bit more about that. I'm going to talk about Buddhist image in a minute that illustrates this, but I'll just say one more thing, or just maybe about me really, is that there's a sense of incompleteness, and that was also shown up more and more by the brilliance of humans, like looking at art, that's like, or reading amazing novels, people showing areas of life that I had never even considered, really opening one's mind. So it wasn't only fear about the unknown, that I had a very strong sense of beauty, really appreciating, and I think that's a way that one can get led into new vistas, that kind of thing, or just really admiring someone who can act in a way that you can't act in. Reading a novel that shows the world in a new way. So a sense of incompleteness, of wanting to stay small, but also being compelled by little glances of vision that other human beings have offered, and that sort of, for me, showed up my own incompleteness in a way even more. It's like the more that truism, the more you know that you don't know. Without vision given to me by culture, by examples of other people acting heroically, without that I probably would have stayed a lot smaller myself. I would have had less urge to grow, and more sort of resting in what might just staying the same or something. So what one doesn't know gets bigger, even at simultaneously as we are shown a bigger vision, and that's definitely been my life as a Buddhist as well. Like the more I practice, the more I realise I don't understand what enlightenment could possibly be, but that sort of draws me on as well. And the Buddha came up with an image, a story about this sense of incomplete information. So he said, so basically what happened was, in the Buddha's time, there was he was staying in Jetta's Grove, which is one of his favourite spots to stay in, and around that time there were lots of wanderers, contemplatives, religious seekers, and they would, in the towns, they would gather and then probably start like having discussions and stuff, and probably it could get quite discursive and competitive, and so apparently contemplatives, Brahmins and wanderers of various sects, with differing views, differing opinions, beliefs, and dependent on support on their differing views. So some of them were saying they were different doctrines and dogmas. So some of them were saying the cosmos is eternal, only this is true, anything otherwise is worthless. And then others were saying the cosmos is not eternal, the cosmos is finite, the cosmos is infinite, the soul is the same thing as the body, the soul is one thing, the body is another. So all of these opinions about things that one can't really ever pin down, So lots of speculative thought, all of these opinions. I don't wake up in the morning and go, I don't know, is the body and the soul the same thing? So they might not be the same questions that drive us, but they're there. And it sort of reminds me of going onto YouTube, and if you ever, just all of these opinions about what's the source of your problems. So trauma is the new source of all our problems, I think. If you can sort your trauma out, then all you have to do is sort out your ancestors' trauma, and then and I don't even know what and then is, but that's so maybe that's, and it's none of the anyway. So sorry, digressing. So these religious people were arguing, wounding each other, apparently with weapons of the mouth, quarrelling and things. And the Buddha said, it's like this story that I know. So in the story, there was a king who gathered together a load of people who were blind from birth, and he put them around an elephant. So there's an elephant and blind people, and he asked them to touch the bit of the elephant that's nearest them and say what an elephant is. Yeah. So and then the king gathered them all together and said, "Have you seen the elephant?" Not quite the right verb, but anyway. And they said yes. And he says, "Tell me what the elephant is like." And so the one who was near the elephant's head said, "The elephant is just like a jar." And then the one who was near the elephant's tusk said, "The elephant is just like a ploughshare." And then the one who was near the elephant's trunk said, "The elephant, Your Majesty, is just like the pole of a plough." And it goes on. The elephant's foot, the one who was near the elephant's foot, he said that the elephant is just like a post. And then they all start arguing about what an elephant is, because each of them is attached to their conception, their idea of what the elephant is, based on their limited experience. And apparently then they all started arguing and then started fighting each other, and then the king was gratified. So I don't know why the king liked that kind of sport. But the Buddha said it's like that, so that the wanderers of other sects are blind and eyeless. They don't know what is beneficial and what is harmful. So what they're doing, and the key is in this bit here, saying dependent on support for their different views. So they might have seen something, and they might have an idea of something, but they've reduced everything that could be possible down to their blinkered experience. Does that make sense? So, and we do that. We this is my experience. This must be it, and they don't conceive of the fact, well, it was just an accident that this one happened to be next to the foot and the other one near the tail. But because one's near the foot, one identifies with that view of the foot. And then if someone says, well, an elephant is so much more than that, it's scary. It's like, what? How can I possibly know what that is? And even if they all agreed and said, okay, let's patch together our ideas of an elephant. Here's the tail, I don't think that would give an idea of elephant. I think it would sort of be a bit like a sort of automaton or something, like roughly elephant, like the golem, like that Jewish, in the Jewish folk tales, the character, the golem, who is just sort of like a lump of matter that's been given. It's like sort of automated or given a sense of life. It's not the real elephant. It doesn't have the mystery and wonder of life, of a thing. So yes, and I think we're like that. We're like that with our own lives and our own experiences. We're like just because of the accidents of my own conditioning, I have these views. I'm born in this society, so we think that our views are our own well-considered original ideas, but they come from the society that's around, and we think that we think even on a sort of more personal level, we have these biases based on how we are, well, just like who we've interacted with, what our family was like, what our experiences in life have been like, and it's very easy then to say, oh, it's like this. I think some of the big ideas in society are, for instance, I don't know, I think everyone is trying, lots of people, especially like thinking about the 20th century, like trying to say, oh, what is it that's at the bottom of things? So actually this is early in the 20th century, but you know, like you have Marx, and he's like, okay, the world is unfair. There's an oppressor and an oppressed, and that's it. That's what's the bottom. That the world is unfair. There's a problem, and this is where the problem lies. There's a blame, and then there's nothing else really within that view. So there's no sense of trying to solve that on a different level. So we have all these ideas, doctrines, and you know, Freud tried to pin everything on repressed desire. Like, oh, humans are problematic. It's all down to this one thing, repressed desire, etc. And then people get caught up with that idea and defend it against any other idea. Yeah. So anything else that doesn't quite fit in with that becomes something to defend against. And we do that personally in our lives. Like, this is my view. This is how I see things. And we do it collectively, and we group together with people who have similar ideas. So like we group together with all the people who think an elephant is like a post. And so this is the opposite to wisdom. So this is the Buddha saying, we're so partial, we're so one-sided, and that's in the face, not being able to face the unknown, not being able to just go, this does remind me of a post. But is there something else? Where does this lead to? What else could be discovered? So it's not even, you could say like, well, that person isn't wrong. It's very, very partial. You know, the world is unfair. People have been unfair to many of us. But that's not everything. Does that make sense? So how we and it's interesting to think, one does this when you start practicing, trying to become more aware. You just start to notice your own biases, and you can notice it when you come up with the same stories over and over again. Like, why are people always like this? Well, what's the common factor? Yes. So, why do we sort of get bruised by the same kind of patterns? It's because of our incomplete understanding, and what's at the bottom of that is that everybody's understanding is centered around oneself. So, the person who is touching the elephant's trunk is just reducing this whole majestic, breathing, living, amazing animal to the trunk, just because that's where they're located. Does that make sense? So we reduce everything to where we're located in our. We can't help it. It's like it's the nature of the unenlightened mind. But what the Buddha is offering is a sense of being able to let go of that need to create completeness from immediate experience and open up into something much more mysterious. Yeah. So that requires new sets of faculties. I always think like enlightenment is like a whole new faculty that I have no idea how to comprehend. It's like we've got our senses, and it would be like having a new sense that made sense of all of our senses. Does that make sense? Like if you hadn't seen light before, like what that would be like, how much more I'm sort of rambling actually, yes, stop there. Yes. Yeah. So we interpret things through our bias and then defend that bias. And the Buddha said we don't need to do that, that there's a whole world of wonder and mystery that we can open up to if we can just let go of thinking that we know how things are. And again, that does relate to how we're sitting practicing a meditation. It's like come to direct experience without interpretation, something else can happen. The more we interpret, the more we're preventing our experience from opening up. Yeah? So the more I go round and round in the same kind of mental habits about why this always happens to me, the less I can free myself from and open up to a much bigger sense of what is happening. Yeah. So what's needed for these blind people touching the elephant is not just to add up the ideas that they all have. So that would be a good start, wouldn't it? Be like, oh, what's your bit like? What's your bit like? Okay, that's interesting. But to really take on the awe of like, what is it actually like to behold an animal as amazing as an elephant? Like it's going to take. I think sorry. This is where we're getting too close to the centre for me to articulate. We can't even gather our understanding we can't even create the kind of understanding that the Buddha achieved by gathering collectively a bigger picture. That's a good start. But what we need is a whole new faculty by which to apprehend. And that's what Buddhist wisdom is. It's a faculty. And it's the faculty of being able to see conditions arise and fall without taking anything personally, without making everything reverting back to self, without making all of our experience about who we are or who we're not. So completely freed from this sense of bias, personal orientation. There are different ways of doing that this quality of insight, which is what we're talking about, that like the traditional way to talk about that would be to practice reflecting on the lakshanas, which is impermanence, insubstantiality, and dukkha, which is unsatisfactoriness. So those are a whole set of meditations that you can do. We do them on retreat. We teach them on our retreats here. They're very, very in-depth, and they will change your perception. But they can also, you can also reflect on impermanence without a sense that there is something more, and that's a problem in our nihilistic age. Do you see what I mean? So if we don't have a sense of vision, which what Akasha Mitra evoked, of like there could be something more, this presentiment that maybe things don't get resolved on the level that the problems are presented. If there's an inkling that there's something more that draws us on, that has these qualities of mystery, awe, rather than just technique. Yeah? So one of the dangers of Buddhist practice in this day and age is that it's technique. Okay, reflect on impermanence in such and such a way. You could do that. You don't even need the Buddha to do that. But Buddhism is so much more than those kinds of things. Yes, Buddhism really isn't technique. It's very reductive. There are techniques that one can use, but it's a very reductive way to think about Buddhism. And it's the danger of talking about prajna, which is wisdom, is that it feels like technique, but it's more like Maitreya Bandhu talks about it as an atmosphere sometimes. Other people talk about it as imagination, which I can't, like intuitively I think that's true. I don't know how to say that to you. You can try and think about that. I don't know why imagination and wisdom are there. I can definitely say awe, And the one thing that I want to talk about is reverence. So when the Buddha became enlightened, often we talk about the emotional equivalent of wisdom as being compassion, which is not untrue. And I definitely know that the more open-hearted I am, the more compassionate, loving, connected I am, the clearer it is that clarity which one associates with wisdom is definitely there. I have to be open-hearted for that to be there. It can't happen without. But this quality of Gaurava, we get introduced to this after the Buddha's enlightened, and he's sitting on a tree. He spends quite a lot of weeks under different trees, very beautiful sort of a contemplative period of the Buddha's life before he becomes an active teacher. And he says, well, I'm the first person to become enlightened. I don't think there's anyone else in the world who has this understanding, and yet I long to look up to something. And so what can I look up to? And then it's almost presented a bit painful, like longing to have something to look up to and not knowing what it is. And then he realises he can look up to the Dharma. The Dharma in this case being how things are, which maybe we can talk about using terms like beauty, mystery. It's like the Buddha understood the way things are, but if he looked up, if he was still reverent, then he couldn't have turned that into something of his own. Does that make sense? He couldn't have appropriated it, or he couldn't have seen the limit of it. You can't look up to something that you see the limit of. Do you see what I mean? So this word Gaurava, which reverence, indicates this dynamic and onward tugging aspect of wisdom. So, and then, thinking about that for me in terms of my quest for completeness, rather than thinking of Buddhist wisdom as like maybe I'm a trivial pursuit. What are those roundy things called? Pie, yeah. And you're looking for the cheeses, and you can get more and more. So rather than thinking like wisdom, that's the final wedge. Which is going to be like, what's the popular culture one? That's the one I don't can never answer the questions. Anyway, and the final wedge, that sense of completeness. Like having a sense of reverence makes more sense of that sense of incompleteness, rather than it being a problem. It's like, there's growth, there's always more, there's something that's drawing us on, and that requires courage because it means moving into the unknown. It means admitting our partiality and not defending against it, and that's I think that's how I choose to express Buddhist wisdom, with those qualities, sort of more magical qualities rather than technical or cognition or even acquired knowledge, all of that. And then what we have is these other qualities of the paramatars. Actually, paramatar is a great word. Sometimes it's described as perfection, but also it's got this word para, which means going beyond. So yes, it's a word transcending. So there's this perfection is the sort of state, the permanent state of something being completed, but then we've also got this quality of self-transcending all the time. The paramatars always showing us about something beyond. Yeah, does that make sense? So these qualities that we've been talking about, generosity, conduct, perfect conduct, or rather that conduct that takes us beyond, or generosity that takes us, giving that takes us into new territory. And then if it's conjoined with wisdom, then it's like more than just us practicing. the paramatars become paramatars, i.e. they become perfections when they're informed by this wisdom that is no longer self-referential. So it's like these practices take us up to the point of wisdom, and then wisdom, the state of wisdom informs them and creates this sense of endlessness. The paramatars, I'm just going to finish now, they're placed in the tradition, the Buddhist tradition of the Bodhisattva, the Mahayana, which has got this Bodhisattva ideal, which is about practicing not just for oneself, that would be completing the wedges in the trivial pursuits, but for all beings, aware that all beings have the same suffering, the same sense of incompleteness as we do, and that it's only by practicing in relation to and for all beings that our practice has any meaning at all. That Buddhist practice has to be outward looking, and it has to be outward looking. I said this before in the other talk. It has to be outward looking for it to mean anything, and for us to make any progress as well. Otherwise, we're just sort of spiritual narcissists. It's a danger. It's danger. And because of this outward looking and dynamic aspect, that's why our teacher Sangharakshita, he talked about the Bodhisattva ideal as being one of the sublimest spiritual ideals mankind has ever seen. So I hope that just like by circumambulating around wisdom and this quality of Gaurava, we can sort of get a taste of it. Yeah. Okay, so that's the end of the talk, and that's the end of our series. And we're going to start a new series. We've got a guest teacher next week. We can't remember. We'll let you know. Subhuti.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, Subhuti. Yeah. Yeah, do come back next week. So the London Buddhist Centre president, Subhuti, he's much more equipped to talk about wisdom. I don't know what he's talking about, but it will it will reference wisdom. Do come. He's a very, very well experienced teacher. He's been practicing for many decades, and he's a very, very articulate teacher as well. So it's really worth coming to that. Thank you, everybody. You can see.